Have you ever found yourself surprised by how much peace someone once known as the life of the party now finds in solitude? Maybe it's not just them, maybe it's you too. As we enter our later years, many of us can't help but notice the shift, whether in those around us or within ourselves. There's this question that keeps coming back to me. Why do people become less inclined to visit others or invite guests over as they get older? Is it because life has drained us of the energy we once had? Or is there something deeper at play? Truth is, it might not be a sign of decline at all. In fact, it could be a natural part of what some call the circle of life. When you've lived through enough joy, pain, love, and loss, there comes a point where you start searching for something else. Something quieter, something more rooted. This story dives into the quiet shift from being social to finding deep comfort in solitude as we age. And through the lens of one man's life, Mr. Lewis will explore what's really behind this transition. Reflections of a seasoned soul. From social to serene, the story of Mr. Liu. Let's begin with a story. Mr. Liu used to be the kind of person whose home was always open, filled with laughter, food, and the company of friends. But these days, he prefers being alone. You'll find him tending his garden, slowly sipping hot tea, or quietly watching his colorful koi swim in the pond. One relative, puzzled by the change, once asked him, "You used to be so full of energy. What happened?" Mr. Liu just smiled and said softly, "People change, especially as we grow older. Our minds shift, our needs evolve." He no longer feels the need to host large gatherings or keep up appearances. If friends invite him out, he'll often suggest meeting at a quiet restaurant instead of at home. He explained that he now finds more joy in the simple things. Planting vegetables, brewing the perfect pot of tea, or just sitting in silence watching the world go by. But does he ever feel lonely? Not really, Mr. Liu once said. People who come and go all the time aren't necessarily real friends. I'd rather enjoy my own space than entertain out of politeness. To him, maintaining superficial social ties that drain time and energy just doesn't feel worth it anymore. Instead, he chooses to invest in a small circle: his family, his passions, and moments that feed his spirit. There was even a time when an old friend popped in unexpectedly after years apart. Mr. Liu welcomed him warmly, but when the friend suggested gathering the old crew for a big reunion, he politely declined. "Maybe another time," he said, proposing they catch up over coffee instead. Was it a way of protecting his peace? Probably. As he gazed out at his small backyard, where fresh green sprouts pushed through the soil, he thought, "This calm. It's easily disturbed by things that seem harmless at first. Maybe it's not just about avoiding hassle. Maybe it's also about not wanting to impose on others." The not-so-innocent visit and a hard lesson in being a burden. From Mr. Liu's quiet decision to embrace solitude, we start to see a deeper layer behind why many older adults grow more hesitant about socializing. Sometimes, what starts as a kind gesture or enthusiastic visit can put others in an uncomfortable spot, as in the case of Uncle Ma, whose story might hit closer to home than we expect. Uncle Ma, a lively man in his early 60s, had recently discovered that an old high school buddy was living in the same neighborhood. Overjoyed by the coincidence, they reconnected after years apart. His friend, equally thrilled, casually said, "Hey, come by sometime. Let's catch up over a few drinks." Now, Uncle Ma, easygoing and a big fan of a good drink, didn't think twice. With no regular drinking buddies of his own, he treated that invitation like gold. And so, the next weekend he showed up beaming, bottle in hand, along with some homemade snacks. First, everything was great. They laughed, reminisced, clinked glasses like no time had passed. But soon, Uncle Ma started sensing a shift. His friend's wife, once warm and welcoming, began to act off. She'd barely say hello, quickly disappearing into another room. Occasionally, he'd catch her glancing away or sighing quietly. Uncle Ma brushed it off, maybe she just wasn't feeling well. Still, he kept dropping by every weekend, bringing drinks and snacks, excited to unwind with his old friend. Until one day, after yet another round of tea and whiskey, his friend hesitated. Looking a bit uneasy, he finally spoke up. "Look, every weekend you come over, My wife and kids have been getting pretty upset. They feel like their personal space is being invaded." Uncle Ma froze. His heart sank. He felt embarrassed, rejected, even a little betrayed. Suddenly, it hit him. Maybe that initial invite wasn't meant to be taken seriously, just a polite thing people say. He left quietly, the bottle and food in his hands now feeling like dead weight. After that day, he stopped visiting anyone unannounced. Even with close friends, a fear of bothering people began to haunt him. "I should have picked up on the signs," he'd later reflect. Or maybe they could have just been upfront from the start. He'd sit alone sometimes, drink in hand, staring into space. "Funny," he murmured, "how silence can sting more than a straight-up no." And then he thought of Ms. Wong from a few streets over, who also faced heartbreak from a seemingly harmless gathering. But in her case, it wasn't about visiting too often, it was about the words we speak. The invisible burden, when money and modern life quietly tear us apart. The stories of Mr. Liu, Uncle Ma, and Ms. Wong show us how something as simple as a visit can turn complicated in later life. But the truth runs deeper. Sometimes, there's no dramatic fallout, no harsh words. Instead, it's the quiet, unspoken weight of modern living and social differences that keeps people apart. Picture this. Two neighbors living just a few steps away: Mrs. Ba, who lives in comfort and abundance, and Mr. Tu, who gets by with hard work and modest means. Their doors are close, but they never truly open to one another. Not because of any conflict, but because of an invisible psychological distance created by economic disparity. Maybe you've felt this too, that awkward space where hospitality turns into quiet comparison. When one household has more, it's easy, even if unintentional, for that difference to show up in home decor, expensive gadgets, or talk of international vacations. Meanwhile, the other side silently shrinks, feeling small, judged, or simply out of place. No one says it aloud, but everyone feels it. That kind of unspoken tension can turn a friendly visit into a mental burden. And then there's the speed of life today. We're overwhelmed. Everyone's exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally. Work stress, bills, endless digital noise, there's barely any space left to think, let alone connect. People often say, life is just too much, and it's true. That's why, when holidays roll around, instead of rushing off to visit relatives or entertain friends, many just want to sleep in, turn off their phones, and steal a moment of peace. It's not because they've lost their love for tradition, they're just tired. Tired of performing, tired of small talk, tired of expectations. Modern life isn't slowing down, it's only accelerating. And in this non-stop motion, solitude has quietly become a lifestyle. Not because people stopped caring, but because many, especially older adults, now find peace in distance. They choose to stay home not out of bitterness, but for the calm it brings. When social interaction starts to feel more like a chore than a joy, silence becomes the safer choice. But here's the thing, maybe solitude isn't something to fear. Maybe it's a gift we only truly understand later in life. After years of noise, pressure, and social performance, solitude can feel like freedom. It's not isolation, it's clarity. It's the ability to choose who you spend your time with, or whether you want company at all. It's waking up without obligation, sipping tea without entertaining anyone, tending to a quiet life that no longer demands so much. So maybe the loneliness we often fear in old age isn't loneliness at all, but a sacred stillness. The world outside is louder and faster than ever. In that chaos, finding peace in your own presence may be the most powerful thing of all. That doesn't mean we cut everyone off. Maintaining a few meaningful friendships matters deeply. But we can rethink how we connect. Maybe instead of hosting a big gathering at home, we meet a friend at a cafe. No pressure, no cleanup, no emotional drain, just simple connection. And perhaps we also need to redefine what being alone means. Solitude doesn't mean you have no one. It doesn't mean you've been forgotten. It can mean you've chosen wisely to live on your own terms, in a world that constantly demands more. That choice in itself is a kind of success. There's a saying, the colder the world becomes, the warmer the love of family feels. And it's true. As our outer circles shrink, the bonds of family and close friends grow more precious. In that shrinking, we find what really matters. Not the number of people in the room, but the quality of the love that remains. And in the quiet moments when you're sipping tea, listening to the rain, watching a garden bloom, you might just realize, this peace you found isn't emptiness. It's everything. It's not a retreat from life. It's a return to what life is really about.